Hi, I'm Ben Schwartz. This is another episode of 10 with Ben, 10 minutes of my news and views from a legal perspective. As you know, I'm an attorney. I've got a viewer that has asked me a question and basically sent me a message and showed me what he was thinking, and I want to show it to you. If you can look at my cell phone, you can take a look at that and you can see, the conversation we're having is about police cameras, and I don't want to mention the name of the viewer, but basically he sent me this, meme. It says, "Cameras to cops is like daylight for roaches, America's police problem." And he wanted to know what I thought about that. A lot of people think that police officers ought to be wearing body cameras. In some jurisdictions, in some states, in some cities, wearing a body cam is voluntary. In some places, it's mandatory. It's been a big issue. I know up in Boston, it's been a big issue in D.C. And so the viewer asked me to do a video and say specifically, what is my position on police officers wearing body cameras? I did a little research on the situation, and I read the news. I pay attention to things. And there's a couple of news articles that I read and I printed out just so I could share them with you. And if you want, you can look them up. We'll put a link in the show notes to these articles. One's a New York Times article. This is titled, "Body Cameras Have Little Effect on Police Behavior," study says. So basically, back at the end of 2017, a study came out, and they had put body cameras on 2,000 police officers in the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan area, and they did a study to see if having body cams on all the 2,000 cops would reduce the complaints relating to, bad behavior by police. And the study found it didn't have any effect at all. And so, a lot of people were shocked because they sort of assumed that if you put body cameras on the police, there won't be any police overreaching, there won't be any abusive behavior by the police. But basically, the study said it doesn't make any difference at all. Another thing that I read, another article that I read, was more of an opinion piece on Forbes.com. It was written by Michael Durkheimer, who's a contributor to Forbes, and it's titled, "Why Don't Police Body Cameras Work Like We Expected?" And basically, I think that the conclusion that this opinion piece came to is because, we have this conception that there's a big problem with police, abusing people and overreaching and doing things wrong. And when you put the body cams on police and there's no change in the number of complaints, maybe you need to look at your assumptions, and maybe the police aren't doing anything wrong. I don't know. I personally have a hard time believing that every police officer out there is, never going to lose control. I have a hard time believing that every police officer is going to follow the law, follow the Constitution to a T. I know a lot of police officers. I've had a lot of criminal defense cases, and I'm not here to bash cops, but at the same time, I know that not every police officer is going to, act like a Cub Scout out on the streets where the stakes are life or death. So here's my position. My position is, do I think that police officers ought to be wearing body cameras? All I can say is, if I were a police officer, would I want to wear a body camera? Without a doubt. I'm not a cop. I'm not trained as a cop. My experience with the criminal justice system is limited to being an attorney and having worked in the criminal justice system, doing criminal defense cases and trying cases, and learning about police procedures that way. But in my practice, I use a private investigator. If someone comes to me, if a family comes to me and they want to hire me to represent somebody in a murder case or a rape case or a robbery case, as a criminal defense attorney, I need to interview witnesses. I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to send out a private investigator. What I really want is for my private investigator to go out and tape record or video record the interviews with the victim, alleged victim, with the witnesses, with anybody who might be able to provide some defense testimony, some information that could help me get my client out of a jam. And even if the people getting interviewed aren't going to give helpful information, I want my investigator to interview them anyways and pin them down on the details, because oftentimes, when you have a alleged victim or a witness saying that my client did something, oftentimes if we get a very detailed statement from them after the event happened, when they show up at trial and they testify and they've been prepped by the prosecutor, sometimes the story changes, sometimes the details change. I've had this happen over and over again. So I like to get my private investigator to interview witnesses. I like to get my private investigator to interview the alleged victim. But I've given instructions to the private investigator that I work with that when you drive to this person's house that you're going to interview, or you drive to their workplace, or before you approach them, before you get out of your car, start recording. And the reason is because I want videotape or audio tape from the point you roll up on the scene to get out of your car to the point where you get back in your car and you're ready to drive away. I want that because it's a question of our own protection. We've had cases where I personally have had cases where my investigator goes out to interview a witness or an alleged victim in a crime, and they complain that my investigator kicked in the door and forced them to make a statement when they didn't want to, when that's not true. And so we started videotaping and audio taping from the point where the investigator is in the car, ready to get out of the car, all the way to the point where he's back in the car and driving away. And we capture everything because witnesses and alleged victims lie. And so my position is, if you're a cop, I can't imagine why you would not want to have a body cam. It doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it's like, for your own protection, you should have a body cam. I don't understand this debate about whether the body cam cuts down on police misconduct. If you're a cop, what in the world would make you not want to have a body cam? I don't understand. So that's my thoughts on the situation. That's my thoughts on the matter. I'd be very interested if you're a police officer or if you are in the justice, the administration of justice business. I'd be very interested if you leave me a comment and let me know what you think. If you're someone who's not a police officer and you're not involved in the administration of justice, but maybe you've been a defendant in a criminal case, leave a comment and give us your thoughts. Thanks for watching. This is 10 with Ben. I'm attorney Ben Schwartz, and I solely am responsible for the content of this video. This is not an advertisement, and if you'd like to get a hold of me, my email address is mail@benschwartz.com.